Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Today, my very special guest is Miss Grace Panditoria. Did I say it right?
Almost. Pondithurai. Hi, everybody.
Panditurai, otherwise known as Grace.
That's right.
She is running for the Ellis County Judge, Ellis County 443rd District Judge in Ellis County. And thank you so much for wanting to serve your community. I've told every
Hmm.
candidate this cycle, it is big to put yourself out there in this thing of Ellis County politics and try to put yourself out for that. So thank you for wanting to serve.
Oh, it's my honor.
Grace, can you tell people of Ellis County about you?
Sure. So, my name is Grace Pondithurai. I am an Ellis County resident. We were one of the first Indian families to move to Midlothian in 1988. So, it is really this community that built the adult that you see before you today. I am currently your chief felony prosecutor here in Ellis County. It's been my honor to serve as one of our assistant county and district attorneys. And in that role, I have kind of specialized in child abuse cases. I've been a child abuse prosecutor for the last 13 years. I cannot believe I've been a prosecutor for 14 years now. I got my undergrad from Southern Methodist, my master's degree in political science and Christian ministry from Dallas Baptist University, and I got my law degree from Regent University. And so I'm really excited, and it's such an honor to learn how to serve our community from a faith-based perspective.
That's an awesome, interesting journey of being the first Indian family there. I mean that had to be quite a shift. But what made you want to run for this position?
Yeah, so ever since I was a kid, I knew I wanted to be a judge. I remember running through the hallways of Midlothian Middle School, because that's what it was called then, telling people I wanted to be a judge. And, at that moment, I don't think I really understood what that meant and the weight of it. And then I started doing this job and realized that the criminal courtroom, which is the judge that I'm running for, helps families in the middle of intense trauma. No one's happy to be in that courtroom. I wish we were doing adoptions. We're not. It's all felony criminal cases. And I realized that an experienced and qualified judge can help families resolve their cases quickly for both sides. And I think that's pretty imperative as we're thinking about justice. As I walked out this calling in my life of seeking justice, I know that it is important to have someone who knows what they're doing, who's argued the law, who's practiced criminal law sitting in the bench when families are telling a jury about all the horrible things that have happened to them.
Now tell me, how do you balance the wanting to get justice and
Hmm.
but justice means justice for the accused, justice for the person accusing. I mean, it's
Yeah.
for both. There's justice hits both of them. It's supposed to hit both of them equally. So,
Yeah.
in your opinion, what are your thoughts on how you balance that?
Sure. I think that sometimes people think justice just means life sentences, and it doesn't. Sometimes it does. And sometimes justice means probation. So somebody can go to drug rehab, or a child victim doesn't have to testify. So when we think about justice, I've always thought about how justice is how are we serving our entire community, which means the victim's family, the defendant's family, but also our community, because the penal code and the laws that are put in place are to help us function as a society together, right? And so what happens in that courtroom has to be mindful of every single one of those parts when you're thinking about justice. I also think it's incredible what happens in a courtroom, because justice is such a biblical concept. And in the courtroom, it's this biblical concept coming to earth. What does justice mean? What does it look like? And it's not separated. Justice and mercy, punishment and mercy aren't on two separate spectrums. They go hand in hand. And I think we see that in the courtroom, even when it is appropriate for someone to serve a sentence in prison, there's still justice and mercy there.
There is a there is a movement afoot in the United States where there are prosecutors
Mm-hmm.
redefining what they're going to enforce, and judges, you know, just kind of sentencing how they want, or not doing, not really, or kind of interpreting the law. What
Mm-hmm.
is your opinion on that?
Yeah, so I grew up in a faith based home that was staunchly conservative, and I am a staunch conservative Republican. And so, what that means is that the text of the Constitution for me is just what it is. The words mean what they mean, and there's no adding or twisting or interpreting them based off of my personal opinion. It's what the words actually mean. And I think that has to translate in a courtroom for a judge, because when you're thinking about criminal cases, it's different than civil cases and it's different than family law. This is the courtroom where we're talking about people's life and liberty. And when you stand up and sentence someone to prison for life, which can happen, we need to make sure that all of those constitutional rights are protected before you even do that, right? So it is a judge's job to enforce. It's not a judge's job to write law, to make law, to put their personal opinions into what they think the law is. If that's what somebody wants to do, they should run for the Senate or Congress. That's where legislation happens. A judge's job, and especially a criminal judge's job, is solely to read the text and do what it tells you to do.
Yeah. And it's just, it's unfortunate that, some people are rewriting law that
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be rewriting anything. They should just be enforcing. But that's a whole nother topic in itself. There is, we've talked about my story a little bit when I was a troubled youth. And
Mm-hmm.
I've come a long way from that. But it was a start in life that started with a decision by a judge.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not ashamed to admit that. I don't shame away from my past. It was rough, but where I'm at now, I think I've established my honor. But that
Mm-hmm.
said, it was a judge that showed mercy and showed grace, you know,
Yeah.
and saw something in me. So there's going to be situations when you're sitting there in the court and you have to make those decisions for second chances.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that? How will you handle those type cases?
Yeah. So I think a judge has to look at every case at a fact by fact, case by case basis, right? You can't look at something and go, I'm going to do this for every single one of these types of cases, because even within that realm, there's different facts, there's different age groups, there's different possibilities which may affect what sentence you give. I think that's why the legislature gives us such a broad range of punishment. And every time I've picked a jury, I've had to stand before the voir dire panel and ask them, can you consider the full range? Because if you can't even consider the full range, then you can't sit in judgment of someone, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes the full range is giving probation, and sometimes the full range is giving life. And I think you have to be able to do that. It's one of the reasons why I think having criminal experience when you are a trial judge for a criminal courtroom is so important, because I've spent 14 years doing just that and offering plea bargains to folks where sometimes it's probation, sometimes it's a plea to a lesser included, and sometimes it's quite a lot of prison time.
There is a, speaking of second chances, since we're on there,
Hmm.
the just recently, the Ellis County District Attorney implemented a program for veterans that run afoul of the law, who meet certain criteria. they will be allowed to go through a veterans court where they will
Mm-hmm.
go through extensive rehabilitation, a big long process. And if they do all of that, they'll get a second chance to get their record expunged so they could go on with life. It's a way to pay back those vets that gave something. As a
Yeah.
judge, you do you support that, and will you support? I think Judge Wallace is the one who's running that, along with Brent
Yeah.
Dura. Would if you were elected, would you support that?
Yeah, definitely. Right now, I'm working in an office that pioneered that and worked with Judge Wallace to come up with a plan, right? So it's actually the district attorney's office, the county and district attorney's office, that gets to decide what cases they're going to file and what kind of plea offers they're going to make. And Judge Wallace has so graciously agreed to stand up and be the court that pioneers where those agreements are held. So after the prosecutor and the defense attorney have made an agreement, these men and women have an opportunity to go through a set of programs to address the problems that and may help them end up in that criminal process to begin with. And so I'm really proud of Judge Wallace for stepping up to do that and allowing his courtroom to pioneer it.
Yeah, it was a big program, and I was kind of wearing people out about that. I complete supporter of that. I wanted my brothers and sisters in arms to have another chance if they fell within those guidelines and they did
Sure.
they did the work, because it's not just a slap in the head. Um, that goes into what is it? I forget the term for it, but there's a it's a justice delay, or there's an acronym that's used for it, for those type of programs that like instead of going to jail, you go to drug program, rehab, you go to psych, you go to, I
Sure.
forget what the name of that is.
It's called pretrial diversion programs.
Okay, you see, that's why God made me a podcast guy and a federal officer instead of a candidate for judge. But yeah, those programs like that, are those some things that you're gonna you're gonna use in your toolbox? Would you like using those in your toolbox?
Sure. So technically, those are programs that are in the county and district attorney's toolbox. And so they get to create this contract that they work out with the defense attorney in order to give young offenders an opportunity to take responsibility and work through some programs before the district attorney's office dismisses their case. And Judge Ermatinger was one of the first judges to say, yes, I'll accept these contracts. Go do it. And if whatever you tell me, if you tell me they've followed the rules and we're going to dismiss it, I will sign the dismissals. And if you tell me they're not going to follow the rules and we're going to go forward with it, we'll do that as well. And I've seen it work really well to help protect some of our young folks who have made poor decisions and really want to take responsibility for them so they don't define what their adulthood becomes.
Yeah, and that was one of those things that came into play with me. So I wanted, there is every judge, every lawyer, every attorney, counselor, whatever you want to call them,
Mm-hmm.
they have a case in their career that marks them. That was
Yeah.
probably one of the hardest, most difficult cases they've ever had to deal with, and it presented not only the ugliness of what crime can be. I understand that part, but having to apply justice to it and the dilemmas that brought to it. Can you think of a case like that, and can you talk about it?
Yeah, definitely. I think over 14 years, I have tried every type of felony here in Ellis County before a judge or before a jury, starting with drugs all the way up to capital murders. So when you ask me that question, it just rolls through my head the different cases that I've had to work through. But one of the ones that have impacted my heart was the first human trafficking case that we tried in Ellis County. The sheriff's office did an amazing job investigating it. You could tell that the investigators in that department wanted to do everything they could to help this child. And then the depth of the evidence, the type of evidence you had to watch, see, look at as you prepare for a human trafficking case, and working with this child as they worked through the feelings that they had as they had to get up and testify, and to watch her face her abuser for the first time and grapple between the feelings of, man, I really thought I cared about this person, and realizing that this person manipulated them to get what he wanted was pretty profound. And then this offender was also a young person, but I really believed that justice and community safety deserved a maximum sentence, because when you started going through some of the evidence, you realized that this young girl in Ellis County may not have been his first victim. And so then you have to think about, man, how do we protect the community? And at the end of that jury trial, the jury sentenced him to prison for life.
Wow, that's big. That,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's the whole thing about that. You hear some stories when you're on the news, they'll sensationalize stuff like that, but the details are always so much more horrible. The
Yes, they
the
are.
details in the details that don't go out there are always just so much more horrible and intense than anything that people can imagine. You just wonder how somebody could be so sick and evil. And those are the kind of things that you would run into if you're elected judge, having to
And
deal with those cases.
and here's the reality of it, DV, is that everyone who is accused of a crime has constitutional rights that have to be protected, which includes facing your accuser, which means when a child says, I've been sexually abused or physically abused by an adult, then that child has to march through a courtroom in a sea of strangers and tell everyone what happened to them, which is one of the reasons why I think a judge with criminal experience is so important, because there are rules in place. The legislature has given the judge rules that can help make that courtroom a little bit safer, a little bit easier for children who have to do that, because they have to. And I think they should, because that is a right that protects every single person who is ever accused of a crime.
Yeah. Now I'm kind of I'm sorry that I didn't ask you to lead with this, but
Sure.
it's something that I asked the other person running for this in this race, and it's
Hmm.
something that I asked you. There is a lot of discussion in this country, and there's many legal philosophies, but basically it goes into the two where it's originalism, and I forget what the other one is. I always forget the other name, but there's two trains of schools of thoughts when doing law and interpreting law. Can you speak to the one that you follow, and why?
Sure. I think you and I discussed this a little bit already when we
Hmm.
talked about the foundations of the Constitution
Right.
and how it should be read, right? I
Right.
am definitely a strict constitutionalist, which means I believe we look at the foundations of the document that we have, which is our Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and they are simply what they are. Like, we can't add protections, we can't take away protections, and there's so many protections for us in that document. In the same way, when we're looking at laws and how they are enforced and how they're interpreted, it's not a judge's job to decide to make a political stance and not choose to enforce a law or hear a case that comes before them. If it gets to a point where a judge feels like they have to make that the decision, then it's probably not a good time for them to keep that office, because a judge, when you swear in, you swear that you're going to uphold the Constitution and hear the cases that come before you. Because a judge's job is to solve conflict. And if a judge can't put their personal opinions aside in order to hear a conflict and ensure that both sides get a fair and impartial judge, then that's not the job for them. And so I'm definitely a foundationalist.
Okay. Now, it in terms of transparency. There's a lot of
Sure.
stuff going on with the legal system in Ellis County. I discussed it when I had the candidates. Now Lindy Betty won, but I had at the time the candidates who were running for district attorney for Ellis County
Hmm.
on. And I have to ask you before I get into kind of some of the issues that I heard about. What are your thoughts on transparency? Like, being open and bringing, because yours is an elected position. So bringing,
Yeah.
involving the community in what you're doing.
Sure. So there are a lot of things that the community can be involved with in a way that they can ensure that the judges they elect are doing the things that they asked, like everything that can be public, when docket settings are set, when announcement settings are ready, when trials are being heard. All of that stuff should be open to the public. And the public should be concerned about it. They should know that the judges they are electing are showing up on time, showing up for docket, doing the jobs that they're elected to for, hearing cases when they should be heard. And then there's a lot of things in the criminal justice system that is not public, and that is to protect the rights of victims, but also protect the rights of defendants. So you'll see a lot of times when we talk about child abuse cases, you don't hear the name of the child. You don't know the relationship between the child and the abuser. Those things shouldn't be disclosed because those families deserve privacy, including the defendant's family. That family deserves privacy and protection. And so a judge should be mindful of that to know, hey, I can't just say things in order to make myself look good. My job is to protect the community, but also share enough so the community can hold me accountable.
Yeah. And that's just a beautiful thing for to have open and transparent government. I believe in complete transparency. Where I mean, and there's appropriate times when you gotta, but that's kind of what this show is about. Definitely.
Sure.
Um, what? So I alluded to it a little bit before on this question before, but there's some problems that I found out during the run for district attorney that are hitting the Ellis the justice system within Ellis County. Now I talked with the sheriff and how he's seeing the problems. And then I've talked to the district attorney and the district attorney that's coming in and talked to how they see the problems. Uh, One of the
Mhm.
people that I really haven't got a chance to talk to is the other component of the legal system, and that's the judges, or at least, the people running to be judge or judges, period. So, what is the most pressing issue that you see in the criminal justice system in Ellis County? I mean, I heard something about there's a major case backlog. How do you plan on addressing those things?
Sure. So I don't know that I would describe it as a case backlog. To me, it feels like more like a case growth log. So we have seen an increase of criminal cases filed in the 443rd District Court um, dramatically. Right now, we have three times as many felony cases in that courtroom as there is in a Dallas felony criminal court. Just let that sink in.
Wow.
Three times more cases in that courtroom. And so when you think about it, the question is, well, if you've got three times as more, but you still only have 8 hours in the day, how are we keeping everything moving? And so I think I've got some really creative ideas on how to handle that because I've been in this courtroom for the last 10 years. This has been the court where I served our community, and I've seen the changes that have happened throughout, especially when every felony criminal case in Ellis County got put into one courtroom with still only 8 hours in a day. Right. And so I think there needs to be some changes to our docket management. And that's simply like when the cases are being heard. I think we can make some changes for when our trial announcements are in terms of our jury trial week. So they're closer together. So both sides know when something is really has a chance of going, which can give some assurity to both defendants and victims that a resolution is coming soon. And I think it takes teamwork, right? The sheriff's office, the DA's office, the judge's office, though none of us are on the same team because everybody has a different role in this justice system. We all have to talk together to figure out how to address some of the things that are happening so we know what the other parts need in order to move their cases along.
Speaking of which, how important is that relationship, like with the sheriff, and will you foster those relationships and build those relationships?
Sure, right. So a courtroom is an adversarial system, but everyone who works in it, from the court reporter to the bailiff to the judge to the defense attorney to the prosecutor, are all criminal justice professionals. We're all people who just really want to serve. And in order to do that well, we have to have a good professional relationship with each other. Now, that doesn't mean everybody agrees all the time, but we can agree in a way that lets me know, hey, I can trust what you're telling me, and it's something I might need to think about next time.
Right, right. Now, if you were elected, what do you hope to accomplish? Oh, well, you know what? Before I get to that question, I wanted to ask you, how important, and if you're elected, will you keep up with? Because I know that teachers, they have to go get some training every year. In my
Mhm.
field, I have to get continuing kind of, and I imagine that as a judge, you're definitely going to have to stay in tune with what's going on with the law, etc. So, how important is that to you, and are you committed to staying on top of those things?
Sure. I think in any field, continuing education is always paramount. The minute we believe we're the smartest person in the room, we're losing something, right? The minute we believe we don't have something to learn, we're losing something. Right now, as our chief felony prosecutor, I also served on the training committee for the statewide association for prosecutors. So I really committed to teaching and learning and getting better, because that only means we can serve our community better. And so I intend to continue that as I advance and when I get elected. You can look at my life. I'm a stereotypical Indian, man. I'm always in
Yeah.
school. Like,
Mm,
here we go, right? From high school to undergrad to graduate's degrees before getting my Juris Doctrine, education is something that is important to me, no matter what position or place in life that I have.
right. Yeah. I wish that Puerto Ricans had that same issue. Well, that school issue, that's not a bad issue to have, is what I'm saying. Definitely
Oh,
not
I
bad.
love it.
I love that about your culture, and roti too. That I love that. So the curry ain't bad either. But the what do you hope to accomplish? Like, if you're elected, and everything goes away, what do you hope to accomplish in your tenure?
Sure. So I think the first thing that I would like to bring is some consistency to that courtroom. I think since 2020, there hasn't been consistency in any criminal justice courtroom. And it wasn't because the judges aren't doing what they're supposed to do. We have incredible judges. We have incredible public servants, the sheriff's office, the police departments. Everybody wants to do the best they can for our community, but we were faced with challenges that made us think about how we can change things quickly and things that were continually revolving. To have successful courtroom management, I think we need to bring back some consistency. I think that's pretty key for both defense attorneys, prosecutors, victims, and defendants. I also think we need to shorten the time between dockets for certain cases, which will help us get to resolution quicker, which will hopefully mean that we'll have less people in the jail. The people who should be in the jail should be in the jail, but maybe we should have less amount of time as we're trying to resolve those cases.
Right. There has to be some creativity to it. There's money is always an issue. There's always other exterior forces, but there has to be creativity to make our system, our criminal justice system, run. You have to be creative sometimes.
I
So
think we
this,
have to, right, DV? And I'll tell you, like, with the growth that we've experienced, with Ellis County being the eighth fastest growing county in the nation, we can't use the same systems and then think, why aren't we moving faster?
yeah, and I that's one thing to be said about about this kind of generation coming up and the differences, yeah, the different ways that they see things or we see things
Hmm.
than compared to others, and bringing those new outlooks to it. I mean, some of those things can be very productive. This
Sure.
is the point when I shut up. I give you the mic to talk to the people of Ellis County because I talk too much, but that's the name of the show. So I'm going to go ahead and be quiet and let you get to it.
Sure. So, as we've mentioned, my name is Grace Pondiferra. I'm running for the 443rd District Court. And it's important to note that currently this district court is our felony criminal courtroom. Right now, we have 3 times as many felony criminal cases as a Dallas felony criminal courtroom, which is why I think it's so imperative to have a trial judge who has had actual felony criminal trial experience. I've been a prosecutor for 14 years, and I am currently your chief felony prosecutor here in Ellis County. I have tried every type of crime from drugs all the way up to capital murders. So I know I have the experience you can count on to continue to protect our community, but also be a fair and impartial judge. As a prosecutor, I was mandated to seek justice. We're the only attorneys that have that mandate, seek justice. And for me, that also includes the defendant as part of the community that we serve. So I know I have already made hard decisions and tough decisions that face a judge. And I know I have the experience and the know how to do that effectively and efficiently so I'm not wasting taxpayer dollar. I know that I'm ready to be your tough, conservative, law and order judge. And I'd appreciate your vote at the runoff. May 20th through 24th is early election or early voting, and May 28th is election day. I'll tell you, I researched runoffs and learned that one vote in the runoff has the power of 5 because so few people show up to vote. So I encourage you, Ellis County, to learn about the 2 candidates and vote informed because when you do, I know that you will cast your vote for me.
You know, I hope that people will go out there and vote. This is an important position. Your legal system has to run, and you get the government you participate in. If you don't participate in it, you can't complain about
Mm-hmm.
what you get. And so I hope that people will go out there and vote, better than there's going to be some fatigue because there's a big municipal election going
Yep.
on there. But you guys, you got to stay engaged in your government. I mean, I'm sure you give time to other things, so stay in tune with your government. But if you want to know more about Grace, you can also go to her website, and her website is right here. See?
Graceforjudge.com.
So, if you want to know more about Grace, you can go on this website and you can go look at. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. You can go to all the articles. She's got articles. Um, there's videos online. You can know about her platform. You could get involved. You get to know this candidate for judge. And I can tell you, I spent a good hour wearing her out, talking, asking questions, and at the thing, and she answered all of them gracefully. I couldn't, and I will say this very very plainly, we couldn't be more blessed by the 2 people that want to run for this office. We couldn't be more blessed. They are both wonderful people.
Thank you,
So
VP.
I hope you guys will make an informed decision and choose wisely and get out there and vote.
Thank you, guys. Yes, go vote informed, right? DV and I come from places where that is not always there. Your right to vote isn't as apparent as it is here. And so don't waste it. Go and vote.
Go and vote. Okay, well, can you stick around real quick after the show?
I sure can.
Thank you. Oh.